Good morning, everybody. Welcome from the double studio of our offices. I'm Jerry Hanley, Viking Performance Training's friendly neighborhood strength coach. And of course, with me is the second half of the podcast, Jonathan Pishner, professional licensed counselor extraordinaire of Apex Counseling. We're both located here in Morgantown, West Virginia. And a great part about these broadcasts is we can reach everybody. So again, thanks for being here on Asymmetric Habits. And today we're talking specifically to parents, although like with all the topics that we try to cover on this show, a lot of little tidbits that people will find familiar to their own situation and hopefully be able to apply to make their lives a little bit better, a little bit easier. So today what we're talking about is to parents who find a lot of situations outside of their control changing, and they're either not sure how to handle it, maybe how best to try to organize it, or maybe just also getting flustered and frustrated about it, to be honest. And as lives just tend to get busier, whether it's the kids doing more or the job getting more demanding, like, you name it. As things just get busier, there's even more variables outside of our control that keep changing, and it can just be hard to manage. So, JP.
Well, so talking about this is going to be funny because I'm going to have one habit that I just kind of repeat over and over again as the fix for this. But one of the things that people get into whenever the stress of this hits is in their stress. A lot of parents will accidentally do a few things to themselves and to their family because what they'll do is within the stress, they'll make rapid fire decisions that are sometimes unsustainable. And so they then have to go back and fix those decisions. And you can snowball yourself pretty quick, especially if you let yourself get stressed out. And one of the things you accidentally do, which is the worst thing, is children learn by observation and experience. They don't learn by explanation nearly so much.
Yes.
So the more stress you allow to come upon yourself, the more you demonstrate to your children that the appropriate manner of dealing with life is to be stressed. No matter that if you explain, like, hey, don't do it like mom does, don't do it like dad does, their lived experience and their lived observation will be that. So, today's is really about like helping people have something so that they're not accidentally letting their kids observe and live a stressed out life and train them to then just continue that. Because, of course, I think every parent would agree that is not where anybody wants their kids to end up.
Right. And to piggyback and add on to that, it's also depending on how you're handling that, and if you're vocalizing it a lot, it can be pretty easy to, basically be pointing blame to just different outside sources. And even if it's just being said as a source of frustration and kind of as a way to vent, just like you're saying about kids seeing that, they may end up taking that as like you said, like end up forming that as harmful lack of accountability later on, where they just think that the more things that they talk about being other people's fault, the less control they have to positively change it. And again, when we're talking about changes that you can't, that aren't, the changes aren't because of you, you just have to basically find ways to manage and deal with them. It can be really easy to do that thinking that you're just venting, and just like you said, accidentally give that impression. Uh, so some examples here, like, because they come across all over. Like for me, as a gym owner, strength coach, working with a lot of school age kids. So one of the big ones is schedule changes. Like I said, it's just a very common example. And like we like to think of extracurricular activities, whether they're sports, clubs, band, you name it, as being um, organized, and methods of organization. The truth is, I mean, like, are they organized things? Yes, but does that mean that they have everything set up ahead of time? No. And like different communities, different schools, teams, whatever, will of course have different grasp on this. but the changing practice schedule or having a sudden meeting or a rescheduled meeting, these are very common occurrences in the life of the kid, which by default makes them very common occurrences for the life of the parent, who is going to be, if nothing else, you're the transportation for all but the last 2 or 3 years of it. So, I mean, there's a lot of changes that happen, let alone if there's other planning, things like that involved. And yeah,
Okay.
like, just so many variables that go into it. And like I said, like from my aspect as the gym owner here, like when I see it, it just never, it always blows my mind thinking in some cases that what if these parents had plans? It's like, what if they just had, not if they, not even like a plan, but simply, like a schedule that they planned on following. Like maybe they have another kid that they have to go help, or maybe it was just their time to get some errands done, and that one practice change or change in the schedule blows all that up.
So now, since this is the one you ran to immediately, I assume that this is the one you end up seeing parents stressed out about the most.
Yeah, this is the number one that I see.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah, is the same thing for you? Because I know you're kind of a semi newly minted step parent. Is that do you end up experiencing the same thing?
Not too much yet. Yeah, not too much yet. Um, but I can see like little things, but they're not. They're still within. They're still in the realm of being within mom and I's control. Yeah, like yeah,
Gotcha.
we don't have to deal with outside influences very often yet. So there has been an increase. It's more than it was when it was just me. I mean, like so there is an automatic increase, but yeah, thankfully not to a big degree yet. But it's
Yeah,
definitely the number one thing we see here when it
yeah,
comes
for
to it.
sure. What was so and what would you say? Because since that's the one you see the most, if you had to make a recommendation, like what is a thing people can do to approach this, uh, that's relatively small that's going to massively impact it? What would be the thing you would identify? Like, how can parents help themselves with this?
Oh man, it's a hard one really because well, I like this. Like, okay, I see when parents have well, the biggest one is actually going to be communication, open communication, especially if they're if they're still like a parent setting of two, so if they have a significant other in the relationship that helps, or just anybody else, whether it's like a family member, a grandparent, somebody else like that, communicating with them pretty often about the upcoming needs of this and schedules and like expectations and things you might be like asking for or looking for. That's the biggest one, is try to not take it all on yourself, because like I said, like one
Get help,
schedule.
basically.
Yeah, exactly. Like communicate with help and get help. And so we see that a lot when parents involve the grandparents, for example, to help. That helps them like deal with schedule changes tremendously. 'Cause, like we have a lot of kids who are actually brought in by the grandparents and not the parents. So that's huge. And the other ones are like, yeah, communicating with, that if there is a significant other there, but that can be hard if this change is pretty last minute. And honestly, in those situations, I don't have a whole lot of good advice other than realize that this is actually going to happen much more often than you think.
Well, I'm glad you said that because I told you that there's, I basically have one thing that I'm going to end up just repeating a lot today. Because behaviorally, it's too specific and there's too many things that can happen. But mentally, that there's one set of things that can apply to all of this stuff that helps a good deal. Because one of the things that people accidentally do, we do this all the time, is we end up getting expectations that are not in line with reality. Uh, and it's absurdly easy to do that, frankly, because one of the expectations that we all have that is out of line with reality, I'm going to get off the parent problem and just put it on every person who could possibly be listening to this podcast. Uh, when someone is rude to us, we get upset almost always.
Mhm.
what that reveals is that we had an expectation that was out of line with reality. We unconsciously expected everybody's supposed to be nice to us. When we go into situations expecting people to be, rude because maybe it makes sense in that moment, for some reason we get less angry. Why is that? Because we had our expectation much more in line with reality. Um, when you drive somewhere, if you accidentally expect that everybody will be perfectly polite on the road, it's very easy to get upset. If you get in the car knowing that you're going to deal with 80% nice people and 20%, rude people or maniacs, your expectations in line with reality is much easier to deal with when somebody cuts you off. Uh, Within scheduling, it's very easy to unconsciously get into a place where you expect, like, okay, this is the way it is on the calendar. Therefore, that is now set in stone and it will never, ever change. Uh, and if only that were the case. But what happens is, of course, something happens and schedules get changed some. And it's very easy to become stressed out about that because you unconsciously expected that to never happen. Now, here's the hard part, because it's easy for me to look and say have expectations in line with reality. This is a practice that takes a while to get good at. But for the person who's starting to experience stress over this, at least acknowledging, like, oh wait, okay, I'm stressed out because I had my expectations were incorrect. Of course, sometimes things just get rescheduled. Uh, you know, so if you're able to make that shift, it makes it much easier to avoid the stress. And especially the second unconscious thing we do, which is related, is we personalize a lot of things. Uh, you know, on some unconscious level, we accidentally come up with, how could they do this to me?
Hmm.
As if we're supposed to be the center of everyone's universe. Sure, we're the center of our universe, but that makes sense. Uh, but we accidentally come up with the idea of how could they do this to me, as if, I don't know, like Bill, who's in charge of scheduling the football games, like was thinking, oh well, Stacy and her kids are going, not going to be able to be there, but screw them, who cares? Like, that's not what Bill, who schedules the football games, was thinking. He was like, shoot, I've got 100 kids and 97 of them could make it at this time. I guess we'll just do it at this time. And 3 kids got left out. But it's very easy to personalize that and get into a place of, how dare they do this to me or to us, to our family. So the thing you're going to hear me repeat over and over and over again is, oh wow, look at that expectation that wasn't in line with reality. Look how easy it is to personalize this. Finding ways to step away from that is going to be the habit change that I just spend all of my time on today, because the behavioral part is much more, in a way, much more difficult.
I mean, everything you said it was so spot on, and it's funny because, like, completely not related to this. Just yesterday, I was listening to some YouTube videos, and one of them specifically mentioned expectation versus reality at the start, and then once you just encounter like some problems or just obstacles, things like that, then you have the chance to reset your expectations to reality. Like, I mean, it was like so spot. And that's just my paraphrase based like from what I can remember. But so as soon as you started talking about expectations and realities just needing to change, I was like, yeah,
Mm-hmm.
that makes a lot of sense. And actually, I feel like, yeah, so almost talking to third parties, like people say, such as me, who might be with a lot of these parents. That's something that in our case, like, we can help with a lot. And that is something that I've actually tried to do a lot more, is when there's parents that I know are stepping into a new situation, giving them some of those heads up advice, almost just like those little tutorials on some of the things to expect. And like I said, so I had to do a lot of that when it comes to middle school parents who have their first kid entering high school, and or or even maybe first time playing a new sport that I where I know some like might be a little bit different than what they've done in the past. But just little tutorials like that to let them know about, yeah, how high school schedules might work, or how this new sports like may work, and expectations. So I never realized that that's what I was doing in a sense. But
Yeah, you're front loading it so that people's expectations can be as close to reality as possible, it sounds like. So you try to help with that essentially.
right. It's almost like when parents are friends, because we see this, a lot too. Parents are friends and they say they both have multiple kid families, but one of them has, more older kids, the other one has more younger kids. In a lot of ways, that parent with the older kids can almost act like a bit of a buffer to the parent with the younger kids by giving them some expectations, some tips of, again, like just what might happen and maybe how to deal with it, how to make things work. But I think, yeah, the resetting expectations, and the, like I was saying earlier, communicating and trying to get help, like, or at least having help lined up if you need it. Those things go a really long way,
Yeah.
like a really long way.
Yeah. There's one specific spot that we gotta touch on. That if we don't, we're missing a major important element, because we're talking about things parents can't control and dealing with them in a way that allows them to not be stressed out. Well, we got to talk about the major element that a parent can't control: the child itself. Because what a lot of parents accidentally make up is that if they can just get the method right, that there is some way to always get a child to do the thing they are supposed to do every single time with 100% accuracy, and if they would just do that, that it would be fine. And of course, as soon as I say that out loud, it sounds bananas. It's like, oh well, of course I would never believe that. And yet, how easy is it whenever a kid forgets their homework to get frustrated? Whenever a kid brings home an F on their report card to get mad? Whenever they get in trouble at school to get all anxious about that somehow? What a lot of parents accidentally do is, behind all the locked doors, they come up with expectations for their kid that they're not aware of. And without the opportunity to examine those, it becomes very easy to just have a lot of upsetness and not even know where it's truly coming from, just blame the kid's behavior. It's not the kid's behavior that's the problem. Children get bad grades and forget assignments and sometimes get in trouble at school. That's what we should expect from children, because children do dumb things and sometimes they get in trouble.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, so
Part of
if I
learning.
was going to give anything for parents to think about, is what expectations out of line with reality do you accidentally have for your own children? Um, I remember when we were growing up. I don't know if kids still have to do this. They probably have some version of it. We were expected to write all of our homework assignments down in a planner, and we were somehow judged on that. I can't remember if we got like a conduct grade or something. I can't remember, but some kids were good at it. I remember I sucked at it. Uh, just something about my brain at that time. Like, I'm better now. I can write stuff down and do a list now, but at the time I just couldn't even conceive of writing down a homework assignment. And that people who expected me to do that were apparently just somehow out of line with reality, because I can even vaguely remember my 10-year-old thought process, and like thinking, oh yeah, okay, I'll do it later, and I just procrastinated myself out of doing it. uh, but how easy is it to look at children and think that they should have adult level reasoning and adult level organizational skills, and accidentally then become upset when they don't, and accidentally like lose track of having any compassion or reasonable expectations around
Mhm. We did not have that in elementary school, by the way. It's like, just like I was thinking about that, I was like, um, off topic, but now that I can't get it out of my head, what I remember is in 3rd grade, I had one of my friends and I, for whatever reason, decided that we needed to be gatekeepers for our grade in a way. And so whenever a new kid would enter a class or like come to school, we would handwrite an exam for them to take and try to pass. And, and the I specifically remember having like at least 3 different hand drawn wall clocks, and the question being like, "What time is it?" And the clock. So so yeah, now you know. So just one of those now you know moments.
So of course we both laughed at the ridiculousness of that because that would be a ridiculous behavior for an adult, but that is such a perfect example of the weird nonsense that children make up in their head. And if a parent would because I mean, it would be very easy for a parent or the school to get wind of that and really freak out, like, "Oh my God, you're bullying the new kids. You're so terrible." Wh- When in fact, I mean, I mean, it's not good, but children make up weird nonsense in their heads.
Yep.
And if you expect something different than that sort of thing to happen, then it's very easy to move yourself into a position of getting really upset by that.
Yep. Um, so tell me, what do you think about this? Because so when you were talking about that, and so I hadn't even thought about that, like you said, with the kid itself or the situations that might come up from that. So it seems to me, like you said, like if a parent wants to try to do something to make that part easier on themselves or whatever you want to call it, it would almost seem like having a just like a small collection of kind of predetermined ideas of what you're going to do in certain situations might help. So not a plan, because like I said, that'll go as soon as you make it a plan, it's going to go off kilter again. But just some general ideas, or like almost even maybe like self promises, like like almost like what to care about more from the aspect of like, okay, will this over here be more of a learning moment, or will this over here be more of a, we think this is actually kind of bad, we think we should do whatever type of corrective stuff we should do, or at least like,
Well, well,
at least if
maybe.
there's units, like if there's parental units, I feel like at least agreeing on that. One parent being like, "Oh, it's okay, you forgot your homework," and then 30 minutes later or later that night, the other parent coming and screaming about how you could dare forget your homework. Like we talked about before, having that type of communication in multi-parent households is huge because you don't want that conflicting message.
So it's hard to have a plan for very much stuff. It's easy to have a plan for things you know are dramatically likely to happen. So if my child gets an F in school, I might handle it this way. That might be an okay plan. There's a ton of things, and I'm saying this to discourage overthinking. Um, you know, a 7-year-old might come home with a note saying, "Your child was licking other students today." There's no way, as a rational adult, that you were going to predict that was going to be the behavior and know how to deal with that. So my advertisement would be, if you want to do such a thing, as have a plan for potential behaviors, it's very easy to overthink that. So you would not want to have more than the ones you are really certain are likely to happen. What do I want to do about the first time that my child, like, I don't know, pushes another kid? That one might happen. That's got some pretty reasonably high likelihood. What do I want to do about my child just choosing not to do their homework? You might have a few plans for that, and it's not a bad idea to mentally rehearse some of that, because then it's easier to not have a negative reaction in the moment. Honestly, the plan I encourage all parents to have is plan to not have very many instant reactions to things.
Yes, there we go.
Pla-
Yeah, huge.
Plan to take time to think before you launch into lectures or punishments or anything that is designed to shape your child's behavior. Because if you don't think through it, it's very easy to have those go badly, or at least have no benefit. And I don't believe in spending a ton of energy to no benefit. So why would you do that? So if you're going to have a plan, I would say make it a 1 point plan, which is don't react instantly to very many things unless safety's involved. Like if your kid is playing with fire in the kitchen, yes, react instantly. Go grab it from them. Fine. But past that, thinking through things is going to produce a way better result than having instant reactions. Because if you start showing that at 6, 7, and 8, and then they start having instant reactions to stuff they don't like at 14 and 15, you're then going to wish you had not demonstrated that 7 or 8 years ago.
Mhm. That's gold right
Uh,
there.
yeah, because always, children learn by observation and experience. They do not learn by explanation.
Yeah, and people in general, but especially kids, tend to base their reaction. They base their reaction to someone much more on like the emotional component that seems to come at them. Does that make sense? I mean, you're the counselor here, but so yeah, like
Yeah,
yeah. So the kid, when they're being told something, if it seems to come at them very, like you said, if it's quick, almost instant, probably has some amount of like you said, like lecturing energy, etc. I feel like they're way more likely to take that negatively and instantly push back than either push back or like cower. I mean, wherever that kid is at, than if the parent, like you said, like thought about it and then like started talking about what's next or anything like that.
yeah. There's not very many scenarios where bringing that angry energy is very helpful. I'm sure there's some exception to that, which is why I said not very many instead of none. But realistically, that there's almost no scenarios where that's very useful.
Yeah.
Um, it's really much more useful often to calm yourself and get to a place where you can bring, calm, nurturing energy to your child. That will often produce better results. I don't want to overpromise because children can get complicated very quickly.
Yeah.
But no matter what, having your expectations out of line with reality and getting yourself into a stressed state is not going to be very useful. So I at least wanted to bring up that a lot of parents can accidentally overstress themselves over the non-controllable nature of their child's behavior, and that's one of the most important places for a parent to be able to like be in touch with not getting stressed out about that part. The external environment is tough, but the oftentimes the child themselves is really the toughest component.
Mhm. Yeah. So I wouldn't even have thought about bringing that into this. So let me ask you a question, and this could be broad. I'll try to narrow it down. But so let's say that it's a parent is trying to juggle just different pieces of their kids' lives, and the parent comes to a point where they are pretty certain, or just like they feel like they actually can't handle something. Like something is too much, which therefore means that the kid is going to like basically be like made to quit something, or they're gonna have to pull the kid out of this thing. What are some good what are some good ways to for the parent to maybe like handle that, communicate that to the child, maybe anyone else who's involved?
Oh man, so this one actually has a good like gold standard if you can employ it. So let's just make up two sports. Let's say you got football and wrestling, and it's just too logistically difficult. One of them's got to go. By far, the best thing to do is to put the choice in the child's court and give them a place of empowerment. Because if you just say, "Hey, I, as the parent, have unilaterally decided we're cutting football," that's that's going to be less good because it doesn't give the child the opportunity for anything. Uh, and then whatever their stress response is, if there's a stress response to that, it's easy for you as the parent to accidentally imagine that you have done something to them. Whereas if you say, "Hey, you know, Little Billy, you got we're having a problem making it to both. You're actually going to have to choose which one of these you want to stick with. Uh, and you don't have to choose today, but you'll have to decide you want to stay with football or wrestling. Now, number one, do your best to not make it like you must decide this today or tomorrow. Like, give them proper opportunity to think. Uh, Help them if they need help making the decision. You know, if uh, they don't know what to do, instead of telling them what to do, ask questions like, well, do you know if you like one of them better? You know, especially if they're getting towards 15 or 16, like, does either of these provide you better opportunities at like college or anything? You know, is there any reason one of these is clearly better than the other? Is one of them clearly worse than the other? Oh, you hate the conditioning practice for wrestling, but you like the conditioning practice for football. Well, okay, that gives football like a 1 point advantage right now. So helping them through it, and this is most important, not taking it personal if they're upset, because it's very easy to personalize that. They're getting ready to experience a loss of maybe something they like, and if they don't understand, if they don't understand why it's so important that they have to lose one of them that's not logistically possible, and they have an angry reaction, it's very easy for the parent to personalize that. Trying to remember that it's not personal, that they're upset because they're losing a thing, and they don't have a brain that is fully developed and can comprehend all the factors you're trying to deal with, is very hard. It's doubly hard for teenagers, uh, for parents to remember this, because teenagers look kind of like adults. They can grow mustaches and they have more developed bodies and they're taller and they kind of look adult like. And every once in a while, they can think like adults. And what most parents don't realize is they can think like adults, but they have short circuiting brains. So they'll think like an adult, and then 2 minutes later, they'll be back to being a stupid teenager. And there's no outward physical difference to signal that a change has been made. And so parents will accidentally get mad at them for just being a teenager, and because 2 minutes ago they were like an adult. So
Yeah.
there's a number of ways it's very easy to take your child's response to this personally. Uh, you want to do everything you can to remember it's not personal. They're upset they're losing a thing, and yes, they are mad at you, the representative of losing the thing right now. It doesn't mean you have to be mad back at them for their inability to depersonalize
Man, I'm so glad you went there, and that actually gave me exactly where we're going to go next. We're going to take, I mean, really the same topic in a way, but just
that.
keep
Oh,
going.
actually, hold on, let me interrupt, because I just realized you brought up something that I wish parents knew
Oh,
they had permission to do more.
yeah,
If you can't handle doing everything, it is absolutely fine to tell your child they cannot do everything. You are not stealing opportunities from them for their college scholarships, or something. Like, it makes no sense to ruin yourself as a parent and then a year later not be able to handle your stress, and suddenly you're yelling at your kid all the time. It makes way more sense to make your life easy enough that you can maintain control of your
yeah,
emotions and your mental capacities and continue to be a good parent. So please know that you have permission to do what it takes to do that. Sorry, I
yeah.
didn't mean to interrupt you, but I realized that needed to be said.
No, yeah, for sure. And but it was like when you were talking about, the child making that choice, having something taken, like the choice of, okay, which of these you want to keep, which one not. A lot of times that, so anyway, the new situation that I want to go into is, a lot of times children will make that choice and it has nothing to do with them having something taken away. It's more that they just don't want to. And parents can, a lot like times, be in a position where they might take that personally too. So this is, especially if it's something that the parent invested in heavily, whether it's money, or I'm just thinking like just emotionally, like time or whatever. And you're like, your sport example was spot on, something like that. Like, and I see this happen every once in a while. Yeah, you have, a kid doing multiple sports, and there's the one sport that, one parent is like just always been their sport, their favorite one, and maybe there's a sport that the other parent has or maybe not, but that kid reaches a point where they just no longer want to play that favorite sport of the parents. And again, I mean, really, that falls right under this topic. It's outside of your control as a parent. It's literally just a kid telling you what they want and don't want to do. And so, like, accepting that on like an emotional level, or, same thing like whether, that's a specific sport example, but I'm talking, this is a lot of situations. The kid who doesn't want to go to college, if for like who has parents who really value traditional higher education, or the kid who is very, very, arts and crafts driven with the parent who is a very like mathematical scientific thinker. So many variations here of just when the kid finally who just has their own, like, hits the point where they had their own interests, their own decisions that they want to follow, and it's just not what the parent would have ideally like wanted. So parents, you get how this accepting this.
So yeah, and what's funny is that this is there's going to be a certain unfairness to how to deal with this. So sorry, parents, you're going to get the unfair end of the stick. Um, but you have a developed brain, your child doesn't. So sorry for that. Uh, so if it was possible to teach somebody to want things that are different than what they want, I would be the greatest counselor in the world, because every single kid who didn't want to go to school, I'd be able to teach them how to want to go to school. And every single person who didn't want to sit at their desk and do their work, I'd be able to teach them how to want to sit at their desk and do their work. If there is a methodology for that, psychology has not yet discovered. And what parents accidentally do is, without realizing that's what they're doing, they try and teach their child to want the same things that they want, which is fine. It's okay to expose them to the thing you want. But then when they don't want it, they just keep trying to get them to want that. Here's the most common example. There are some kids who will make C grades just to, not fail classes, but have no interest in academics. And I worked with one not too long ago. That particular kid just wanted to be an athlete. If you left that person alone, they would sit and practice their sport 10, 12, 15 hours a day. Maybe they go play video games sometimes, but then go right back to practicing their sport, and just does not want straight A's. Doesn't want it. And there is no methodology by which I know that you can teach a child to want that, or vice versa. Some parents, are disinterested in straight A's, but the kid's just an academic. I grew up with one. That dude was smart, and his parents would have much rather he played football. And now here's the unfair part. For the person who has the developed brain, I have to ask you as the parent, at least have your expectations in line with reality. It's okay to be sad that your kid doesn't want the thing you want. It's okay to be annoyed by it. It's okay to, it's okay to have feelings. If you keep trying to pound that desire into your child, it will not go anywhere that you want it to go. You will only damage the relationship. That is the only place it can go if you are trying to get your child to want the thing that you want. So your job as the parent is to try and get your expectations back in line with reality, to try and not take it personal that, you know, uh, they really want to be in the band and you wanted them to play football. Um, that's not about you. It's just about what they like and what they don't like. Uh, Even the kids who like don't want to get straight A's. I mean, if they'll at least do enough not to fail, it's your job as the parent to try really hard not to take that personal, and to not get too upset about that. And okay, my expectation is here. I have a C child who could make A's. They're smart enough to make A's. They just put no value in it. They don't want it, and I'm going to have to. I would have to over punish them just to do it, and really harm my relationship to get them A's. do I really want to harm my relationship with my child in the service of A's? Maybe not. Maybe that's not the path. So trying to get out of that expectation and trying to not take their lack of desire for your desires personally is the mental shift. But as always, I say that with empathy because I recognize I'm saying that like it's easy, but that takes a ton of practice and a ton of attention to your own internal thought process. So I recognize that I'm proposing something that is simple, but is really not at all
Mhm.
easy.
Yeah. Awesome, man. Absolutely awesome stuff. I think that's a great place actually to wrap this up for people. Uh, so your closing thoughts, like your action steps.
So if you are stressed out around your kids, you're teaching them to be stressed. Kids learn by observation and by experience, not by explanation. So making the internal shift to try and just have expectations along with reality and not take things personal, whether it's from your own child that you can't control very effectively, or from the child's environment, or from teachers, or from coaches, or from schedule changes, or whatever else in the world that we didn't even get a chance to touch on. Trying to make that internal shift to not be as stressed is going to be the game changer so that your child learns not to be stressed. And so you have an easier life because we care about you too.
Yeah. hmm and on my end, it's just about communicating with the people around you that are going to help you, particularly in this life as a parent, and so that you don't feel like you necessarily have to do everything yourself. That alone will help you not get internalized so much of that stress and that workload. And then, like we were saying, if things do get a little out of hand, be honest about it and just try to figure out how to bring that back under you. So all right, brother. Great time talking with you. I think this was a good one today. This was really good. So, all right,
Yes.
everybody,
Yes, sir.
getting catch us on podcast land with both Apple Podcasts and Spotify podcasts, Asymmetric Habits. I almost wanted to slip it in earlier because when you mentioned overthinking things, because we released 2 podcasts this week, both of them are not overcomplicating things. So check
Yeah,
out.
one of them was from the archives, wasn't it?
Yep. Yes, sir. So one was fresh just 4 days ago. The other one was about 21, 22 months ago. So uh, again, asymmetric habits. Thanks everybody for joining us, and we'll catch you later.
See y'all.